Hi, everybody. Joe Farina from the Dick Biondi film. Pam will be with us in a little bit. She's just having some technical difficulties, so sorry about that. So it is my honor and my pleasure to introduce to you one of the most legendary musicians, artists, and actors, singers of all time. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the great Bobby Rydell. Bobby, thank you so much for joining us.
Joe, it's my pleasure. Pam, I'm sorry we can't hear you. All right, but stick around, okay?
Okay, sounds great. Sounds great. In our documentary, you talk about how Dick Biondi always made time for you, and in what ways did he do that? And not only for you, but maybe for other artists as well.
Well, I'll tell you the truth, Joe. I mean, every time that I was in Dick's company, he was always marvelous. You know, he always had all the time in the world to talk to you. You know, no matter how busy he was, he always took the time to talk to you. And I think the last time I saw him in Chicago, it was, I think Frankie Avalon and Fabian and I were doing a show. And Frankie and I, we spoke to Dick, oh my God, forever, you know. So basically what I'm trying to say is that he had time. He was such a genuine guy, you know, really a down to earth guy, really, as they call stand up guy.
Oh, that's great. And how did you first become acquainted with Dick Biondi? And
Wow.
what struck you about him at first, and even up to now?
Well, my God, when did I first get in touch with her? When did I first meet Dick? That's going back a lot of years. You know, I would say as early as 1959, 1960, you know, when Dick was, you know, playing my records and Frankie's records and Bobby Darin's records and Paul Anka, so on and so forth. And once again, you know, he meant an awful lot to me in my career. You know, I mean, there were a lot of disc jockeys across the country, you know, who meant a lot, you know, because they played the record. But Dick was special. You know, Dick had the time for you. You know, he wasn't just Dick Biondi, disc jockey, you know, in Chicago. What was it, WLS?
WLS, you got it.
WLS AM radio, yeah. So, you know, he was more warm. He was a warm guy. He wasn't just a disc jockey. You know, what can I tell you? You know, it was a beautiful man.
Oh, that's fantastic. And you touched on it a little bit already. And I was just wondering if you could talk about it a little bit more in terms of the roles disc jockeys played in the music business at that time. And
yeah,
and you know, Dick had a big role in it because he was the #1 DJ in America in the early 1960s. But I was wondering if you could talk a little bit more about what type of roles disc jockeys had back in those days.
Well, you know, like I mentioned earlier, you know, every disc jockey across the United States, so whether it be Philadelphia, New York, New Jersey, Chicago, Detroit, Minneapolis, LA, so on and so forth, they always, you know, they were the guys who played the records and the kids who went out and danced to the records or bought the records and danced to them. You know, if it had a good beat, they liked it, they go out and buy the records. So basically that's, you know, what disc jockeys did, you know, for all of us guys, you know. And my God, I just remembered something where Dick was the first one to play back in 1963. He was the first disc jockey to play the Beatles.
That's right.
And it was, I forget the name of the record, Please, Please Something.
Please, Please Me, you got it.
Please,
yep.
please me. But it wasn't a hit for the Beatles, was it? I think their first one was She Loves You. Yeah. What was it? That their first one?
Yeah, well, early on, I think the one that kind of broke them in America was "I Want to Hold Your Hand." And
I Want to Hold Your Hand.
That was right before they went on the Ed Sullivan Show, because I think they wanted to come to America, but they wanted to have a #1 record first in America to come before they went on the Ed Sullivan Show.
I'll tell you a great story about the Beatles. Years and years ago, back in 1963, a young lady by the name of Helen Shapiro, a very, very fine singer from the UK, we toured for 2 weeks in a bus. And one night, it was about 10, 11 o'clock at night. We're going from city to city in the UK. And there's a car in front of us. And she says, they're the Beatles. Well, this is 1963. I started looking around the bus for cockroaches. I didn't know what she was talking about. Who knew the Beatles? So they all came on the bus. They knew me,
Wow.
for them, hello, Bob, so and so forth. And they went their way. And I figured, well, they're just, a bunch of four guys. They're gigging. They're going to go work a nightclub, maybe a social dance, so on and so forth. And like you just said, now I go home and it's 1964. And everybody across the country is watching Ed Sullivan. And he introduces the Beatles. And I went, oh my God, I met those guys,
Oh my God.
Yeah, really, yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic. And one of the great things about the Beatles is they really had an appreciation for artists like yourself. They grew up listening to you, and
Oh yeah,
those American musicians and
absolutely,
artists and singers had a big
absolutely,
influence
Joe.
on them.
A matter of fact, they really liked the guy who recorded on the same label that I recorded for. In the early days, it was Cameo. Then it became Cameo Parkway, and his name is Charlie Gracie, and he recorded a record called Butterfly. And the Beatles, they loved him. And now, Charlie, he goes over to Europe. He tours there once, twice a year, and he's very, very popular there. So you're right. Yeah, the Beatles, listened to a lot of the American artists back then. Sure.
That's great. And I was wondering if you could describe what it was like to be suddenly thrust into the spotlight, and how did it change you and your dreams growing up in Philadelphia, and
Well,
just
yeah.
how did that all happen for you?
Okay, let me try and give it to you in a nutshell.
Okay.
When I was like maybe 5, 6 years old, I used to watch television and imitate people that I saw on TV and sing. And my dad kept looking at me, And when I was about 6, 7 years old, he used to take me around to nightclubs when I was 7 years old. And he would say to the owner, is that all right if my son got up and sing a couple of songs and did some impersonations? So I did, and of course, people applauded. Of course, audience loved, kids
Yeah.
and dog acts. They love kid acts and dog acts. So they applauded, and I'm 7 years old, and I said, wow, all I have to do is do this, and they do that. What a wonderful feeling, And the only reason I'm in the business is because of my dad. If I had any talent within me whatsoever, my dad was the first one to see him. So, he was my champion. He's the guy who really, really started me, in the business. Matter of fact, back then when I was doing nightclubs at my age, 6, 7 years old, it was like my vaudeville. It kind of got me ready for what was going to happen later on in my career. Never knew it was going to be, that big, but I was really ready for it.
Wow.
So, and then the first time, my first hit record was a song called "Kissin' Time." That was the summer of 1959, and we're driving to New York City. My manager and myself, and we're on the Jersey Turnpike. And we get into the area where we can hear WABC radio. And at that time, it was Bruce Morrow, who's still on the air. He's with Sirius. And he says, here's a young kid. He just came out. He's got a great new record. Here's Bobby Rydell with Kissin' Time. And that was the first time I said, oh, wow, man, that's, wow, fantastic,
Wow.
Yeah. But, I've always been a level-headed guy. Nothing ever really went to my head. I love to talk to my fans. I like to take pictures with them, sign autographs. I always have time for my fans. So, the things that happened to me in my career, I'll always remember and appreciate them because I've had a wonderful, wonderful career.
Wow.
Some 60 years now.
Wow.
Believe that?
That's incredible.
Really.
What an incredible career you've had, and And I think, I grew up listening to Dick Biondi when
Sure.
on WGAMK, my generation. I'm in
Okay.
I'm 47. And that's how I first learned about great artists like yourself. He would play your songs all the time on the radio, and every song he would play was every one was just out of this world. Wow, this is amazing. And he has such a personality. But that's how I got familiar um, with your music, and
Uh-huh.
that brings me to my next question. For
Yeah.
years, you've been performing with Frankie Avalon and
Yeah.
Fabian. I know they're dear friends of yours.
Absolutely.
What is it? What has it been like working with them, and working all together after all
Oh,
these years?
okay. We started this show back in 1985. All right. And my manager at the time, he had this idea to put three Italian kids, teenage idols from South Philadelphia. Let's put them together and do a show. So we all talked to one another and we said, yeah, that sounds like fun. Be great. So we go out 1985 and we're doing like 40, 50 concerts and it's sold
Wow.
out everywhere. Crowds were going nuts. And later on, I started, after about 6 months, a year, we're into the concert, and I turned to Frankie, who I call Cheech. I said, "Yo, Cheech," I said, "This is great." I said, "But how long is this going to last? A year, 2 years tops? It's going to be over." We're going into 2021. We're still doing the show, and it's
That's
better
great.
now than it was back in 1985. And Frankie has a great line. He said, "Look at the three of us. We were three kids hanging out on a street corner together, and now we're hanging out on stage together."
Wow.
Yeah, yeah, it's really cool.
It's an amazing feeling, and not only to do that kind of show, but do that with people that you grew up with in the same
Oh,
neighborhood. I mean, it's like,
oh,
wow, how did this
well,
how did this happen?
Oh, yeah, really. Frankie and I go back. I first met Frankie when I was 10 years old. I was playing drums, and Frankie, of course, played trumpet. And Frankie at that time, I think, was about 2 years older than me. I was 10, he was 12, whatever. And we used to do USO shows, hospitals, veteran things. We were kids. We had a little band. And that's how long our associationship goes. And Fabian, I didn't know, although he only lived a half a block away from me
Wow.
on 11th Street. I was 2400 South 11th. He was 2500 South 11th, half a
Oh
block
my God.
away. And Frankie lived on 9th Street.
Oh my
So we
God.
were on 11th Street. Frankie's on 9th Street. And when we're on stage and I go on first and I introduce Fabe. And I tell the audience, I say, folks, when Fabe and I were growing up, you know, Fabe and I lived on the same block, on 11th Street. And Frankie lived 2 blocks away on 9th Street. And when Fabe and I were kids, we used to throw things at Frankie. And the audience, and I say, we used to throw the kids from 10th Street. We didn't like them kids, but it's really great. The camaraderie between, the three of us is just precious. It's really precious.
Wonderful. And last couple questions for you, Bobby. Who has been the most exciting person or persons to work with during your career? And I mean, what's been the most wonderful experiences throughout your illustrious career? Can you talk about some
Oh,
of those?
Joe, there have been many. My first appearance in Las Vegas, I was 20 years old, 19 going on 20.
Wow.
And I was at the Sahara Hotel in Las Vegas for 2 weeks with George Burns.
Oh my
That
gosh.
was, yeah, and he was wonderful. He was
Uh,
wonderful. We used to do, he'd introduce me and I'd do maybe about 20 minutes or so. Then he'd come out and we'd do a soft shoe with a derby and a cane. We'd do a soft shoe. And we would do it to Some of These Days. Okay, and he would sing it like, some of these days, you're gonna miss me. Some of these days, days. And then I would do it like Darren, You know, some of these days you're gonna miss me, baby, right? And then we go into a soft shoe together, and the audience just fell in love with it, you know. And he
Oh,
was
wow.
I'll tell you what, when I was done, you know, after I did my 20 minutes and we did our thing together, I used to go upstairs, get undressed out of my tux, come downstairs and stand in the wings every night for 2 weeks because I wanted to watch him. I wanted to see how he delivered a line, his timing, you know, because I've been able to work with a lot of great people. George Burns being one, Red Skelton, Milton Berle, Jack Benny, Danny Thomas, Perry Como. The list goes on forever. And to be able to just, you know, at a very, very young age, to because you could do nothing but learn from these people. Yeah, that they were giants in the business. And if you had any brains whatsoever, you know, you brought that in, you know, you remembered it, you know, how well these guys worked in front of an audience with the timing, this, so on. So you know, there have been many, you know, like I just mentioned, Skelton, Jack Benny, George Burns, it goes on. It goes on
Oh,
forever.
and Margaret too. I mean, that must have been
Oh,
an
yeah.
experience.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
Wow.
Matter of fact, Ann and I, we screen tested together for George Sidney, who was the director of Bye Bye Birdie.
Oh,
And, you know, we read lines from the script. And then, like, she sang, you know, one boy once, and I sang one girl once, or something, yada, yada, yada. And Mr. Burns, Mr. Sidney said, okay, thank you ever so much. We'll be in touch. And I go home. Then it's 2 weeks after I did the screen test. My manager calls me. He says, you landed the part of Hugo Peabody. Well, I went to go see the Broadway show. And I'm looking at Hugo Peabody. He didn't have a line. He didn't sing. He didn't dance. He didn't do nothing. I said, what the hell kind of a role is this going to be? You know? But every day when I went to the studio, Columbus Studios, every day when I went there, my script got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger because Mr. Sidney saw something. He saw some kind of magic between Ann Margaret and myself. And, you know, I'm not a movie star. You know, I didn't make a lot of movies, but if I had to be in one movie, my God, you know, Bye Bye Birdie is a classic, such as Grease, you know, because all of the kids in high school, when they do plays, they either do Bye Bye Birdie or they do Grease, you know.
and they went to Rydell High.
And they went to Rydell High in
That's
Greece.
right. That's
That's
right.
right. Yeah. I went to Bishop
Awesome.
Newman.
Awesome.
I went to Bishop Newman High School. I didn't go to my own.
Oh my gosh, Bobby, this has been just absolutely, absolutely fantastic for you to join us. And before we let you go,
Yes.
if you can do us a favor, and if you can announce the winner of our Dick Biondi film T-shirt and mug,
T-shirt, and mug,
and
anything else?
T-shirt.
Mugs and T-shirt, and the winner is Mark Jacobs.
All right, Mark.
Oh, way to go, Mark!
Yeah.
And a mug, and a mug. Oh, that's nice. I like it.
Thank you.
I want one of those. That's nice.
Okay, you got it. It's on its way. Absolutely. Cool. Bobby, it was really an honor and a pleasure for us to spend time with you. And thank you so much for doing this. And we wish you the very best. Thank you so much.
Joe, I appreciate it. Thank you ever so much. Pam, I'm sorry we didn't get a chance to talk a lot. I'm sorry about your audio problems, but this has been an absolute, you know, just a pleasure and a real thrill for me, you know, speaking about Dick Biondi. And let me say something else, as we mentioned before we went on air. I didn't know you were Dennis Farino's son.
Oh,
you know, and when I said, and I'm looking at the name Joe Farino, and then you said, I'm Dennis's son. And I love your father so much.
Thank you.
Oh, please.
Thank you. And I know he loved you too.
We hung out a lot. We used to go to Washington, D.C., the big National American Italian Foundation, your father, Tommy Lasorda, Yogi Berra, Oh, what a ball we
Wow.
used to have. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'd love to hear more stories. Maybe one of these days we can connect and we can talk more about it. That'd be great.
Yeah, that'd
Bobby,
be
thank you.
wonderful. Oh, yeah, that'd be wonderful. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Bobby. And stick around because Pam needs to get back to you real
Okay.
quickly. But thank you again, and we'll be in touch soon.
Okay.
Okay.
Stay
All
well and
right.
stay safe. Okay.
You,
Thank you
all right,
so
buddy.
much.
You too. Thank you.
Okay,
Bye-bye.
Joe.